Alright, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how you can make a Keva style plank building, but make it, really stable where you can throw something at it without the whole thing collapsing. Because basically, that little block, you hit it, it knocked down a portion of it, but the rest of it remains standing. And I'm not using any kind of constraints or anything like that. It's just they're just sitting on each other with gravity. Alright, let me go ahead and close that. And I am using Blender version 2.833 or point 0.3. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. Now, my default scene, I don't have the cube. Do not delete your cube because you will need it. I'm going to go ahead and hide the camera. And if you have the light in your scene, go ahead and hide that too, get it out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and add a cube, add mesh, and then cube, and this is what you should be starting with. Alright, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to shrink this down on the z-axis, S for scale, Z for the z-axis, and then 0.25. And then if you look over here, go ahead and click on the item tab right here. And if this side menu isn't showing, you can press the letter N to toggle that in and out. But we need to make sure we keep track of some of these numbers. Not necessarily right at this moment, but later on. Alright, 0.5, it's 0.5 meters thick. Alright, we need to make this bigger in terms on the X and Y axis. So press S for scale, and then Shift, and then Z, and then press 3 to scale it up 3 times, and then enter. Basically, that told it to scale it up on the X and Y axis, but not the Z axis. That's what the Shift Z does. It says basically not the Z axis. Alright, now since we are dealing with physics objects, we're going to want to make sure this scale, all these numbers are set to 1. And the easiest way to do that is just anytime we change the size of an object, we can bring up or press Control A and then apply the scale. Now, that's basically the default size for this object now. Alright, or the default scale would probably be more accurate. Alright, now let's go ahead and apply a material to this so we don't have to later. Just click new, leave the material alone. We can always change it later. But it's easier if we go ahead and assign a material now because we will be duplicating this object. Alright, let's go ahead and assign it a physics property. Click on the physics tab, click on rigid body, keep this set to active, and then turn this up to, let's say, 10. And then change this to box. And surface response, this is friction, turn this up to 10. Alright, make sure bouncing is set to 0. Sensitivity, you leave that alone. Collections, leave it alone. Go to dynamics. And then right here, click on deactivation. Click on that little arrow. And then click start deactivate it. And what that does, it allows the objects to start in a deactivated mode. Basically, it will not become active until it's impacted by another object. Alright, and if it moves slow enough, below 0.4 meters per second, it will deactivate. Alright, now let's go ahead and build the vertical beam. So we need another cube. Add, mesh, and then cube. Alright, I'll go on the front side view by pressing 1. Now I'm going to scale this on the z-axis, S for scale, Z for the z-axis, and then click 3, or 3 on the number pad, and then enter. And then once again, all these are not showing 1, and since it's going to be a physics object, Control A, and then apply the scale. Go ahead and assign this a material. I'm just going to make this just a different color than what the other one is for now, but we can always change it later. Important thing is just go ahead and do it now. Now apply a physics material or physics property to it. Rigid body. Set this to 20. Change this to box. Go to go to surface response and change this to 10. And we're just basically adding more friction so the pieces don't slide against each other as easily. Alright. Then right here, click on deactivation and start deactivated. Alright, now we need to properly position these so that they can be duplicated in a pattern. Alright. So, let's go ahead and elevate this one, or raise it in the Z-axis. We know this is right in the middle of this one. And we know this one right here is 6 meters tall. So we need to raise this by 3 meters to bring it right here, plus since this is 0.5 meters thick, we need to raise it an additional 0.25 to make it bump up against the top of this edge. So we're going to press G for grab, Z for the Z-axis, and then 3.25. Enter. And if we put this on wireframe, we can see that they are perfectly aligned, which is what we want. And the reason why we want these to be perfectly aligned is whenever you have like a really tall building, let's just say if you zoomed in a whole lot, all the way as far as this would go, and there was a tiny gap. I mean, so small you can't even detect it whenever you're zoomed out like this. But if you have like 30 or 40 floors, all those little gaps add up, and when something impacts it, the building collapses a little bit until all the surfaces reach, and that right there causes them to be unstable. So you need to get rid of the gap completely, which is what we've done. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and press 7 to go into top side view. Now we need to move this top piece over, and because we're going to use, each beam for the most part is going to be at the corner, and at the corner there's going to be another flat piece right here, another one right here, and another one right here. So we need to have this beam centered right here at this corner, but I'm just going to move the top piece. So we need to move this piece over this way and up this way. So let's look at the size of this. That's 6 meters. So the center is 3 meters away, right? See what I mean? So I'm going to press G for grab, X for the X-axis, and then 3. Enter. And then do the same thing on the Y-axis. G for grab, Y for the Y-axis, and then 3. And then enter. Now this is perfectly centered right here. Now this is where the fun comes in. And this is why we needed to go ahead and add a material to each one and go ahead and add the physics properties to each one. Otherwise, it would be a headache later. Alright, now let's go ahead and duplicate these going this direction. See if the way it's set up now, if we duplicate these and if we do it right, the next one can be right underneath here. This pole can be right underneath here. Now we need to move this whole contraption the width of one of these flat pieces, which is 6 meters. So let's select both of them. Box select, press B for box select, and then left click to drag, and make sure you have both of them selected, and then press Shift D, and then X, and then 6. Enter. And see what that done. It basically duplicated in such a way where the pattern is being repeated. Alright, now if you've done this right, you won't have to press Shift D. You can just press Shift R, and then it repeats the last function. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just do it 10 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Alright, now we need to go ahead and duplicate this piece one more time. Press Shift D, and then X, and then 6 meters. Of course, it's actually not 6 meters. It's actually 5, right? Because we don't need it hanging off to the edge at the end. So we can go ahead and just move it back. Grab X -1, enter. Alright. And we need to go ahead and do the same thing to this side. We need to shift this one in this direction 1 meter. Grab X1, enter. Alright. Now let's zoom out enough so that we can see all of them. Press B for box select. Select all of them. Now we need to do the same thing in this direction. So these need to be, we need to duplicate these and then move it to 6 meters this direction, because these flat pieces are 6 meters wide. Alright, Shift D, Y, 6, enter. And just like before, instead of Shift D in and create more duplicates, we're just going to press Shift R for repeat, to repeat the last function. And I'm going to do it, make 10 rows this direction also. 3, 4, 5, and again I'm pressing Shift R, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Alright, so now we have basically 10 by 10 rows. Alright, now what we need to do, go ahead and press 3 on the keyboard, kind of zoom into this corner, and then just right click to select one of these beams, and then press B for box select, and then box select all those. And the reason why I'm doing that is because you're selecting the entire row. And we need to duplicate these and then move them to on the Y axis 6 meters. Shift D, Y, 6, enter. And again, I made the same mistake I made a while ago. I actually meant to only move it 5 meters, but that's no big deal. Press G for grab, Y for the Y axis, and then -1. Alright. Now, if we look, we need to do this side the same way. We need to move it 1 meter over. So press 3 for the side view, zoom in, and then just right click to make sure this is the only thing selected. Press B for box select. Select all those so you're selecting the entire row. And then press G for grab. And then Y for the Y axis. And then 1 to shift it over 1 meter. And then enter, obviously. Alright, now you can see that they're all set up in the right position at 10 by 10 grid. Now let's duplicate it vertically. I'm going to press 1 to go into front side view, and now I'm going to press B for box select, and then just select all of these. Alright, now each I'm going to go ahead and deselect these, but you can go ahead and keep them selected. This beam right here is 6 meters high, and then this is an additional 0.5 meters high. So when we duplicate these, we need to duplicate all of them and then raise them in the z-axis by 6.5 meters, which is 0.5 meters for this, and then 6 meters for this. Alright. So I'm going to press Shift D and then Z for the z-axis, and then 6.5. Enter. Alright, see? Perfectly aligned at end to end. Alright. Now, I'm going to make this 20 stories tall. We're already 2 stories, so I'm going to press Shift R. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Now your computer will start to get a little bit laggy. 17, 18, 19, 20. Alright. So basically there you go. You got a 20-story tall building, and this is going to be an ultra stable building. Alright, now let's go ahead and create a ground. Add, mesh, and then plane. And we're just going to scale this up to some kind of arbitrary amount. Just make it, you know, kind of big. Alright, now press 1 to go into front side view. And this is important to make sure it's set to orthographic view. And you can toggle it in and out of orthographic view by pressing 5 on the number pad. Perspective and orthographic. Alright, now what we need to do is put this floor right at the bottom here. Now we know, excuse me, we know this floor currently is in the middle of this beam. And we know this beam is 6 meters tall. So we can do one of two things. We can either press G for grab, and then Z for the z-axis, and then -3, because we know that will move it down to the very bottom, because we know the dimensions, and we know that these beams are in the 0 position, you know, in terms of the z-axis. See, the z-axis 0 meters, so we know that we can do it that way. But let me go ahead and grab that plane again. But if we didn't know for sure, and we didn't want to risk it, we could always just you know, G for grab and then Z for the z-axis, and then move it however we want it. And it's easier if you just get it kind of close like that, and then zoom in as far as you can. Like in this case, I still can zoom in just a little bit more. Press G for grab, Z for the z-axis, move it in a little bit closer, and eventually you're zoomed in this much, which is as far in as you can get. And then G for grab, Z for the z-axis, and then bring it where it's almost touching, just slightly below, because you can get by with it with just the ground. But if you've done every piece, every layer, every floor like that, that gap would add up. But in this case, it's no big deal. Alright, now we need to go ahead and apply the scale for the floor, because all these are not set to 1. So press Ctrl A and then apply the scale. Now let's go ahead and give the floor some physics properties. Click on the physics tab, go to rigid body, change this from active to passive. And we're putting this on passive because we do not want the floor to fall with gravity. Basically, we want it to remain static or passive. Alright, we can leave this on convex hull, that's fine. We can leave the friction low if you want. I kind of prefer to stick it on 1. And that's pretty much it for that. Now we need to create a projectile. And this projectile will be what we use to throw at this building. And the old standby is a sphere. So I'm going to add mesh and then a UV sphere. Now here's the UV sphere. It's right down here. I'm just pressing G to grab to move it out here. I'm going to make this bigger because that's kind of small. S for scale, and then just scale it up until it looks like something you'd want to throw with this. That looks about right in my opinion. And again, it's a physics object. These do not show 1, so we need to press Ctrl A to apply the scale. Now keep in mind, we made each one of these beams 10 kilograms, and each one of the beam 20 kilograms, and each one of the floor planes 10 kilograms. So that's a lot of weight in this. So we're going to have to make this sphere kind of heavy. So click on rigid body, and I'm going to set this to 1,000 kilograms. And I'm going to click animate it, and then while the mouse is over top of that, I'm going to press the letter I to add a keyframe. And we need to add a keyframe because we want it to be animated up to a certain point, and then we want to turn animation off. That way it becomes just an active object. And we're doing that way we can accelerate this object using keyframes and then release it, kind of like throwing a ball, kind of like winding up and releasing the ball, and then all of a sudden gravity and velocity takes over. Alright, now I'm going to just zoom out just a little bit and just move this over. I'm going to grab this sphere on the G axis, on the X axis, and then just move it out to about right here. And I'm going to go ahead and set a keyframe right here. Press the letter I while hovering over this. Alright, before I go any further, I'm going to click this tab, the Scene Properties tab. I'm going to open up the rigid body world. I'm going to turn this up to 240. And I'm going to click on the cache. 250 will probably be enough for this. And temporarily, I'm going to turn off the rigid body world. It will make it easier whenever we're moving through the timeline to set up the keyframes for this sphere if this is unchecked. Alright, now let's go to frame 50. Click on 50 and then press G for grab and then X for the X axis, and then move this sphere to about right there. And then hover over here, set another keyframe with the letter I, and then come to frame 25. Alright, and then go back to the Physics Properties tab, and then right here where it says Animated, uncheck, and then press the letter I to add a keyframe. And basically, it accelerates from frame 1 on up to frame 25, and then the animation turns off, essentially, or the keyframing for the sphere turns off, and at this position, it's like the hand releases it, and then gravity and velocity takes over. Alright. Now, I'm going to go ahead and press File, Save, and I'm just doing this. Save it however you want, but I'm just doing this so if it crashes, I don't have to start all over. Alright, now let's go ahead and give this a try. If I press play, it should work. Oh, well, now that confused me there for a second, but then I remembered. Remember, I asked you to turn off the rigid body world. Now it will work once I turn the rigid body world back on. That was an old person moment right there. Let me go ahead and press play once more. Alright, there we go. Simple enough. Of course, I actually had the, I didn't look at it from the top and the sphere just kind of grazed it. I don't really want to do that. So I'm going the top side view. Yeah, see the sphere basically hit the corner. I want to hit it more centered. Alright, let me go ahead and turn off the rigid body world. Go to this keyframe, and then I'm going to press G for grab, and then just move it to about right here. And then reset this keyframe with the letter I, hover over it, letter I. Now I can turn the rigid body world back on, and if I press play, it will hit it more centered. Now with rigid body you can preview it as you bake it, or you can just click bake down here, which it's actually quicker. See, it's a lot quicker actually if you just press bake. I'm just going to let that go to about 250, and 250 should be about right for this. I actually like this style of rigid body building better than, you know, the standard Keva Plank, but I do a lot of the Keva Plank ones because I have an add-on called Physics Assist, and it was created by Moby Motion, and it will help you build Keva Plank buildings. But I think it's very important to learn how to build them yourself. Alright, it's almost finished. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, not bad. And you almost was enough frames to watch it completely collapse. Let me go ahead and click the delete bake, and then turn this up to 350, because 350 should be enough. Change this to 350 and adjust the timeline. Click bake again. Now the good thing about rigid body, you don't always have to rebake everything. Even though I changed this number and changed this number, it's just going to start baking where it left off. It doesn't always do that. Sometimes it gets glitchy, especially if you have thousands and thousands and thousands of planks. But ones like this is kind of small. It will generally resume effortlessly. Because this right here is only 4,420 planks. Alright, let's see what that looks like. That's enough in my opinion. Alright, now let's go ahead and turn the camera back on. I'm going to go ahead and select the camera and press 0 to look through the camera. And I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, try to get the camera in a position where I would want to render this. I think these buildings look kind of better if the camera's down low and looking up. That will probably work. Alright, yeah, that'll work. Now, instead of using actual, lights, instead of like add light, all this stuff, I'm just going to add an HDRI. So I'm going to press on the World tab or World Properties tab, and I do have an HDR already in here. And good HDRs go to HDRI Haven. I think it's HDRI Haven. Maybe it could just be HDR Haven. But they have a whole lot of HDRs, world textures, I guess you could call them. And they work great for lighting a scene. So go ahead and pick you out a good HDRI and add that to your world background, and we'll see what this looks like in terms of rendering. I got mine set to 128 frames, pardon me, 128 samples. I'm going to go to my preferences, and I'm going to make sure optics is turned on both GPUs, and I'm going to press render and then image. Just do a test render and see what that looks like. Now, usually whenever I'm doing Keva Plank type buildings, I don't use optics because optics takes a while. Now, I definitely don't want this pink. So I'm going to go to one of these beams, select it, come over here and change this color. I'm going to make this kind of a brownish color, and I'm going to select one of these flat pieces and make it kind of a dark color. Alright, now it should look a lot better. Render. Now I'm going to show you something, and this is what I was talking about with the optics versus CUDA when it comes to something like this. Right now it's using optics, and watch how long of a delay there is before it starts rendering. Render, image, and then you just have this little limbo portion right here where it says building optics acceleration structure. You know, still 12 seconds ain't bad. Let me turn CUDA on, turn both GPUs on, and it will probably take about the same amount of time. Render, image, but see, there's very little delay. It just starts rendering. And see, this is one of those cases where CUDA was quicker. And it's my experience when it comes to these rigid body buildings and so forth, especially when you have thousands and thousands of objects, CUDA is going to be way quicker than optics. And that's because the build time with optics is way longer, even though the render time is quicker. Alright. And I guess that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to go ahead and render this scene out. And let me create a new folder. Toot. And let me go ahead and render these. And if, like I said, if you have any questions, let me know, and I will try to answer them in the comment section. But I hope you liked this tutorial. I want to do more tutorials. It's just a lot of times I don't have a lot of time. But anyway, I guess that's it. Later, people.